Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT10, and BT10 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the GrandKuwagamon OTK deck. So for the most part, the GrandKuwagamon OTK isn't really changing a whole lot. It just gets a couple of new tech and tools to help flesh out and round out the deck. But essentially what the OTK is trying to do is just go all the way up into a GrandKuwagamon, the promo one. Then we're going to be using his Digiburst ability to be able to give himself lots of extra security attack pluses, and then we're going to go into our GrandisKuwagamon to be able to deal lots of damage onto the opponent and have some nice multi-attacking capabilities to be able to close out games very easily with. So with all that said and done, let's just get right into the profile, starting off with the Digitama. So I'm only going to be running 4 copies of Yokomon, so you could run a 5th Digitama if you wanted to, and that 5th Digitama could be anything you want, but Yokomon for this style of deck is the most ideal Digitama, just because we're going to be throwing away our inheritables anyway to our GrandKuwagamon, so that way he could gain as many instances of security attack plus as he can, and Yokomon just rewards us for using it as Digiburst fodder. So it has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this card is trashed due to the activation of a Digimon's Digiburst ability, then one of our Digimon gets plus 2000 DP for the turn. So it just allows us to be able to use the fact that we're going to be Digibursting to make our Digimon stronger. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Terriermon. So Terriermon is an anti-meta floodgate where it has this nice passive ability native to it, where during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects, really limiting the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans, forcing them to deal with Terriermon before they can make some of their more efficient lines of play. And for that same style of reason, I'm also going to be running 4 copies of Pomumon. So Pomumon has the nice passive ability where during all turns, players, meaning both you and the opponent, can't play Digimon by card effects. Well, we're not trying to play Digimon by card effects in this style of deck, so it's more of a negative hindrance for the opponent, forcing them to deal with Pomumon if they're going to want to try to get free value off of some of their abilities to be able to play their Digimon more effectively. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Palmon. So this is the promo Palmon, and this is just another good card to use as Digiburst fodder. So what this card is doing is when it's trashed due to the activation of a Digimon's Digiburst ability, then we get to give one of our Digimon jamming, so that way our attacks, especially with all of our extra instances of security attack plus, could be as strong as they possibly can and as safe as they can possibly be. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the brand new BT10 Kokuwamon. So we actually do have a new Kokuwamon to be able to use in combination with Okuwamon X Antibody without really missing any tempo, just because the old Kokuwamon in green does Evo for 1, but it does have a pretty decent inheritable ability that you could take advantage of. It's just that this doesn't cost anything to Evo into as a rookie, so it just makes the use of our cards a little bit more efficient. Then the inheritable ability is actually pretty decent on this card, where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon attacks and deletes an opponent's Digimon and yours survives the battle, then we get to gain 1 memory, which is just a very classic green thing to do, and we've seen this type of ability on multiple other cards, so we could utilize our cards alternatively to be able to help with our memory generation. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Kokuwamon X Antibody. So Kokuwamon X Antibody has the alternative Digivolution condition where we could Digivolve him on top of a Kokuwamon for 0, so it just allows us to have more instances at being able to Digivolve on the same level, which is pretty good, so that way we could try to keep specific inheritable abilities around when we're going to be utilizing the Digiburst ability off of our GrandKuwagamon. So this is just already pretty good, just because of the cycling off of being able to Digivolve for 0 on top of the same level, on top of the fact that he has a nice on-play when Digivolving ability that we could actually use a little bit more efficiently now because of that new base version of Kokuwamon, where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and then add 1 card with Insect or Machine in its traits from among them, and 1 X Antibody option from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So with that brand new Kokuwamon, it actually does make this card a little bit better, and on top of that, we're already just running a whole bunch of insects, so this is going to be one of the deck's, if not the deck's best dedicated search tool. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Stingmon. So this kind of is a flex spot for the deck, and your level 4s, you do have some flexibility on how you could run them and what you want to run. But I do like Stingmon, well, because he's an insect, he costs 1 to evo into, and he has that same style of inheritable ability that we saw with our Kokuwamon from BT10, where when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon and ours survives the battle, then we get to gain 1 memory. So if we use that in combination with this ability and we didn't Digiburst both of them away, then we could have the ability to gain lots of extra memory to make even more powerful plays possible. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Weedmon. So because we still are running the Digiburst stuff, Weedmon is one of the best level 4s for this deck to use, just because it's another tool to help with our memory generation for us literally utilizing Digiburst. So he has this nice ability where during your turn, when this Digimon is trashed due to the activation of a Digimon's Digiburst ability, then we get to gain 1 memory. So literally just Digibursting him away means that we're going to make whatever play we're going to make a little bit more efficient thanks to Weedmon. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Kabuterimon. So again, this is another kind of a flex spot. You could really try to customize your level 4s to fit whatever you feel like you need. But I do like Kabuterimon just because, similarly to Stingmon, he is an insectoid, and on top of that, he also evos for 1. And on top of that, he's even a blocker to have some form of defense in the deck. Next, onto the level 5s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Okuwamon. So this is the BT1 version of Okuwamon, and it has, again, that similar style of ability compared to Stingmon and Kokuwamon to be able to help us gain some memory when we attack and delete the opponent's Digimon and ours survives the battle. So between all 3 of them, when we delete an opponent's Digimon, then we could potentially gain 3 memory, which is just a lot of memory to be gaining all at once. On top of that, this Okuwamon does have a pretty efficient evolution cost compared to a lot of other level 5s in the game, making him just a good tempo tool, on top of the fact that he's going to be synergizing with our Okuwamon X Antibody. But obviously, the main level 5 of the deck that we want to use in combination with our X Antibody is going to be the promo Okuwamon at 4 copies. So this card is absolutely bonkers for how this deck wants to play, just because his inheritable ability states that during your turn, while this Digimon has Insectoid in its traits, then it gains the Piercing ability, so it just allows our GrandKuwagamon and GrandisKuwagamon to be able to delete the opponent's Digimon and deal damage to them all in one go, which is just how Green generally wants to play. So having a card give Piercing is super important for the deck, and then on top of that, he has a nice ability when we're actually Digivolving up into him to be able to try to have some good tempo plays. So he has this nice ability native to him, where during your turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a Digimon with Insectoid in its traits, then all of your opponent's Digimon gain the ability where during all turns, when this Digimon is suspended, lose 1 memory until the end of the opponent's next turn. So just for using him as part of the Digivolution means that we basically get to apply a mini ice wall onto the opponent, and that's really good because we're in green and we have ways to be able to suspend the opponent's Digimon on top of also taxing some of their plays for them wanting to attack with some of their Digimon as well, making him just a super powerful card to be using in the deck. And then the last level 5 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Okuwamon X Antibody. So Okuwamon X Antibody has the alternative Digivolution condition where we could Digivolve for 0 on top of an Okuwamon. So this just makes both of our Okuwamons, the Promo 1 and BT1 Okuwamon, pretty decent to use just to make him a super efficient card at not only cycling, but utilizing both of their inheritable abilities and their native abilities as well. So what we're utilizing Okuwamon X Antibody for is his when Digivolving ability, where if we have an Okuwamon or X Antibody option in this Digimon's Digivolution source, then we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down. So this already combos very nicely with the promo Okuwamon to be able to then gain a memory off of suspending one of the opponent's Digimon down. And then on top of that, if this Digimon attacks, then we get to switch the target of the attack to one of the opponent's suspended Digimon. So it just allows us to be able to swap what we were actually trying to attack to make our attacks more efficient. Then on top of that, the ability we're trying to utilize on top of that is his secondary ability, where during your turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a Digimon with Insectoid in its traits, then we get to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1, which is pretty good, making us more tempo efficient, getting up into our higher stages. And speaking of our level 6s, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of GrandKuwagamon. So this is the promo version of GrandKuwagamon, and this card is the backbone to how this deck is going to try to OTK the opponent. So he has the main ability of Digiburst 2, so by trashing any 2 of this Digimon's Digivolution source, we get to activate the following effect, where one of our Digimon gains security attack +1 for the turn. So because of how this ability is applied, we do get to stack up multiple instances on top of himself, and then when we Digivolve into our GrandisKuwagamon, then the buffs do carry over onto our GrandisKuwagamon as well, which is what is allowing us to be able to OTK the opponent, is all of these instances of security attack plus Grandis' ability to multi-attack. And then what's making it even better is the piercing off of our promo Okuwamon to actually be able to deal damage while attacking into the opponent's Digimon. And then that's also helping us line up some extra memory generation off of all of our memory generating inheritables if we decided to keep any around. But as far as the last Digimon of the deck and other level 6, I'm going to be running 4 copies of GrandisKuwagamon. So GrandisKuwagamon ordinarily Digivolves for 4 on top of a level 5 with 12,000 DP, which is pretty decent already, but we do have the alternative Digivolution condition, where we could Digivolve him for 1 on top of a GrandKuwagamon, which is also pretty nice considering we do have lots of memory generation to basically make it so that we could go from level 5 into a GrandisKuwagamon super easily, utilizing all of our other parts and pieces. Then on top of that, he has a nice when Digivolving ability to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, which again plays into the promo Okuwamon's ability to basically tax the opponent's suspensions. So it allows us to use that to gain some extra memory back, which is really, really nice. Then he has that same style of ability where then if this Digimon attacks, then we get to switch the target of the attack to one of the opponent's suspended Digimon, which just allows us to be able to make our swings, again, a little bit more efficient. Then on top of that, he has this nice secondary ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 4,000 DP, making him 16k while it's your turn, and if we utilized Digiburst to be able to give him extra DP with Yokomon, then he's going to be hitting for even higher numbers, making it so we don't necessarily always need that promo Palmon, but the promo Palmon does help with some of our other cards, and in case we don't have the exact stacks that we need. And then on top of that, he has a third ability where it's a when attacking ability once per turn. If GrandKuwagamon or X antibodies in this Digimon's Digivolution source, then we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, and we get to unsuspend this card. So this is just what's allowing us to be able to be extra aggressive, because the whole idea is we're going to apply all of those security attack pluses onto GrandKuwagamon, Digivolve into GrandisKuwagamon, suspend the opponent's Digimon down so we could attack into it. Then when we attack it, we're going to delete the Digimon, deal all of that damage thanks to piercing, and then on top of that, unsuspend this Digimon and suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down to be able to not only just clear their field, but deal all of that damage all in one go, or if all of their security is already just broken off of the first attack, then we could use that unsuspend to be able to swing for the game. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gran Del Sol. So Gran Del Sol is a brand new option from BT10 that's actually adding some extra defense into the deck. So even though it is a pretty expensive 8-costed option, it has the ability where if we would use this card and we have 2 or more green suspended Digimon in play, then we get to reduce the memory cost of this card by 2. So if we use this in combination with some of our lower level Digimon to try to swing and be aggressive with, then it just makes this type of a card even more efficient to use. But even without that extra efficiency, it's still just a pretty powerful removal tool because of its main ability where it states that we get to suspend one of the opponent's opponent's Digimon down, then return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon, ideally the one you just suspended off of this option, to the bottom of the owner's deck. So it's just a really good tuck option that's acting like a better version of Terrace Cluster, where it's just being able to get rid of any Digimon we feel like we need to get rid of, as long as they're affected by this type of a card effect. Then what makes this card extra good is the fact that it does have a nice security ability of activating its main, making it so that the opponent's actually going to have to think about attacking into your security, whereas before, the deck really didn't have that great of security threats. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Green Memory Boost. So Green Memory Boost is just a consistency and tempo tool rolled all into one card. So we don't have to commit other cards onto the board if we don't need to, which makes Green Memory Boost even more valuable, so that way we could try to hide our Digimon in raising, play some Memory Boost to try to dig out some of our other parts and pieces, and have the ability of delay to gain some extra memory to make more powerful plays possible. So for the low cost of 3, its main ability states that we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add a green Digimon from among them into our hand, then the rest go to the bottom, with this card going into the battle area for its secondary main ability of delay to gain 2 memory when we need it to make, again, more powerful plays possible. And then the last card and only tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Mimi. So Mimi is a really decent tamer just because she'll always be hard setting our memory to 3 if it's ever less than 3 at the start of our turn, so that way we could try to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can. And Mimi is actually acting as one of the deck's alternate win conditions for when we break all of the opponent's security, just because her secondary ability states that during our main, if we have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play, then we get suspend this tamer to basically get another raising phase. So whether that's hatching another Digi-Egg or moving a Digimon out, ideally you want to move the Digimon out, so that way that Digimon can then swing for the game, making her one of the best tamers for the deck. And then there's still just a whole bunch of other different tech and tools that you could think about incorporating to be able to customize the deck and make it your own. So as a huge big asterisk, we don't know exactly where the security promos are going to be, but when we do get the security promos, the Palmon is actually a pretty decent security threat, just because he could suspend the opponent's Digimon as a rookie, which we're pretty flexible with our rookie slots already, not really dedicating a whole lot to them, making this just a pretty valuable card for the deck. But we do have a level 4 green security card that we could run that's doing something similar if you're just looking to try to get that style of effect and have more security threats for the opponent to think about. Then on top of that, we do have other decent rookies that we could use. So if you want a rookie that we could just reuse over and over again thanks to the Digiburst ability, then Lalamon is a really good card to act as some Digiburst fodder. Or if you wanted to, you could even use Tentomon as a good digging tool just to try to add some extra consistency into the deck. Or if you want to change up the deck to better incorporate the X Antibody option, then the EX1 Tentomon is really good at doing that to try to make our Digivolutions, especially when we're attacking, a little bit cheaper and more efficient to use. And then X Antibody is allowing us to be able to Digivolve mid-attack with its inheritable ability, on top of the fact that, well, because we're already an X Antibody-based deck, it's just another good card to add to the possible search targets to our Kokuwamon X Antibody. And then, as another way to be able to gain the piercing ability, you could run Kuwagamon and Kuwagamon X Antibody, just because, well, it's just more inheritable sources for us to Digiburst away, and it's just another way for us to gain piercing on our higher level Digimon. Or if you just want to play a more tempo-efficient Insectoid, then we do have a card like Roachmon that's easy to hard play to be able to get a level 4 body out to start climbing with right away, or at worst, it's just a good, easy tempo tool to be able to climb our stages with just because it evos for 1. And if you want to run a hybrid in the deck, just because hybrid for game is still just a factor that the opponent is going to have to think about, then Metal Kabuterimon is one of the better ones, just because most of the time we're trying to Digivolve this on top of our Tamer, which will only cost us 2, and it's actually a really good card to combo and synergize with our GrandKuwagamon promo as another Digiburst fodder, just because we could use him to cycle, just because he could Digivolve for 1 on top of other level 4 Digimon, even though we're never going to be using his when Digivolving effect. But if you do want another supporting level 6 in the deck just to kind of surprise the opponent, then Bancho Stingmon is one of the better level 6s to do that, just because he natively has piercing and he could still deal a pretty decent amount of damage as long as the opponent has a pretty strong Digimon in play that we want to attack into. And then if you want to run a level 7 in the deck, then Omnimon Merciful Mode is one of the best level 7s that Green has access to. Then Green has a slew of different options to be able to suspend the opponent's Digimon down. Then we do have some other options to add some extra utility into the deck, like Evolution Plugin, to be able to make some of our evolutions a little bit more efficient, on top of being able to have some good card draw, and as another searcher in our security for our Digimon to add to the overall consistency of the deck. Then we could also splash into red because we do have a red tamer that we could think about utilizing, and a delicate plan to basically turn off all of the option threats in the opponent's security. And the best red tamer for us to use to be able to have access to a delicate plan is going to be Hero, just because he has generic level 5 or above synergy and support. Then we also have access to Cool Boy if we want more consistency with our X Antibody cards, and if you're running more X Antibody cards, then that just makes Cool Boy better to not only have more targets to search for, but to also have some extra ways to be able to gain some memory and draw some cards for us just utilizing our X Antibody Digimon. Then we still have access to a slew of other different tamers in green and possibly in blue with Davis, so there's just a whole bunch of different ways that we could customize the deck depending on what you have and what you want to gain out of the deck. But for the most part, this is just my interpretation on what a GrandKuwagamon deck is going to do in BT10, and I think it's still going to be one of the better decks to play in BT10, just because it's, well, one of the better OTK-based decks, and as long as the deck is consistent, which it's getting better at its consistency, and as long as the deck is powerful and fast enough, then it's still going to have a relatively decent time performing against virtually any deck, just because it's sticking to its own guns and playing its own style of game. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.